Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for spending your hour with us today for our Wednesday webinar series. My name is Alice Fox, and I am the Director of Talent Delivery at Talent Connections. A few housekeeping items today will be that this is a 1-hour recorded webinar. If you have any technical questions or issues, please email me at alicefox@talentconnections.net. Participants will be muted. Use the question feature to submit questions. The chat is disabled for us internally, so it will be using the question feature that is on the webinar. And the other thing is that Dr. Wright Burke will be having a chat storm, as she calls it, which I love that, which means you can ask questions throughout. And she will also prompt you if you have any questions to make sure you use the question, and she will answer those as we go. This webinar is approved for one SHRM Professional Development credit, and that activity code will be given at the conclusion of the webinar. Today, I am pleased to introduce Dr. Aisha Wright Burke. She joined ADP in November of 2009. Currently, she leads the thought leadership, strategy, and execution of talent planning, succession, and movement globally. Previously, as a valued and esteemed member of the field HR organization as a human resources business partner, she was instrumental on several stretch assignments on HR strategic teams related to the learning trajectory of the global HR organization, deployment of ADP's strengths-based approach, career growth and development, and a host of integrative initiatives to drive and influence engagement, talent movement, and acceleration with key businesses. Prior to ADP, Dr. Wright Burke held multiple roles nationally and internationally with Siemens Incorporated, a global engineering and technology company, where she spearheaded key talent and diversity initiatives. She has over 20 years experience in field HR, talent acceleration, diversity, early career leadership programs, compensation, and talent acquisition. Dr. Wright Burke earned her bachelor's degree in business administration from Clark Atlanta University, a master's in education, human resources, organizational development, and a doctorate in adult education, HROD, from the University of Georgia. She also served as an evening HR instructor at the School of Continuing and Professional Education at Kennesaw State University. Dr. Wright Burke holds Korn Ferry 360, Potential Solution Assessments, and Society of Human Resources SCP certifications. Dr. Wright Burke is a member of SHRM and SHRM Atlanta chapter. Additionally, she is an Atlanta Track Club board member, volunteers with the Atlanta chapters of the Society of Human Resources, National Black MBA Association, Associate for Talent Development, and the National African American Association of Human Resources. She resides in Sandy Springs, Georgia, with her husband, Gennaro. Thank you so much to Dr. Wright Burke, and we're so happy. Take it away.
Thank you, Alice. And thank you for the partnership Talent Connections. It's a pleasure to be with you all today to talk about cruising to your career excellence and fueling your ambitions. And just to give you an idea, we'll start some thoughts before we get started. When you think about career, focus on what you can control versus what you cannot. And this, I was reminded of this when preparing for this presentation, because there's another quote that talks about sailing, and it's, you can't control the wind, but adjust your sail. So think about that as you think about your career, what you enjoy doing, what you aspire to do, and during this conversation today. In terms of goals for this session, like you probably read on LinkedIn or either before you join this call, hoping to give you some ideas about building authentic manager-employee relationships, navigating the career lattice from a driver's seat of your career from an employee perspective, and then advising employees on their career journey from that passenger seat, that manager's perspective. And then leveraging your resources to level up, elevate, and maximize impact for your career. When you think about relationship building, from either employer or manager perspective, how often are you connecting regularly on priorities? Because the closer that you and your manager are aligned on your priorities, what you're focused on, the less room for assumptions, less room for assumptions. And you can also take the opportunity during these conversations to be observant. It's just as important to be a listener as it is to be the one that's talking and sharing a message. You can learn a lot from being observant and listening. Tone, variation, if someone's nervous, if someone's really excited about something. So listen for those nonverbal and verbal cues, whether you're in video or not, because it can tell you a lot of information about how that relationship is growing and how it's being cultivated and what you can do to lean into someone else to support them in their goals. In addition, you might want to think about asking open-ended questions because that way you can find out what people are interested in, where they lean in more, what they're comfortable with, and that can give you an idea on how you can cultivate that relationship even more deeply between a manager and employee. One thing that comes to mind in supporting each other's goals, just to give you an example, one of my manager had a meeting she was organizing around, and it seemed that just needed some support, might help because she had a large scope of work. So I offered to help in organizing the meeting, coming up with topics, and it was a great opportunity to learn more about the executives that were part of the meeting, the topics that we face in our organization, and what was important to bring up to this group. So, what started out as helping, and I was interested in helping, it didn't take up that much time, ended up to be a great learning experience for me. So, take those opportunities when you see them, or if you don't know about opportunities that are available, ask. The worst thing that someone can say is no. Then you can ask again about something different. It's also important to understand career desires and mobility. Um, First, understanding what your desires are in your career and how you can fuel them, but also, are you open to relocation? Do you, do you know where your strengths are? Do you know what key knowledge, skills, and abilities that you have and how you can leverage them within the organization that you're in? Understanding that first will help you articulate that to your manager for them to understand where you like to be, how you like to develop, so there's less room for assumption. And giving more information helps build a relationship between manager and employee. I had a manager recently ask me about ways that they can grow their career into internal HR at ADP. And it was wonderful that she reached out to me because we hadn't talked in depth in a while. We met each other a couple of years ago, and we always say hello to each other when we see each other in the hallway and chat about holidays or what's going on in our lives. And we had a deeper conversation about her career, which was wonderful because I would have never known that she was interested in internal HR had she not brought it up. And there may be a project that's not confidential that she can work on moving forward. So those pieces are still coming together. But if she had not raised the, the topic, and if we had not had that relationship, she might not have been as open to having that discussion with me. So take those opportunities. You never know when you are able to help someone else or someone else is able to help you. Some other things to think about in terms of building rapport. You may want to think about the topics that are safe for you to talk about as a manager or an employee, and think about things you have interest in and what someone else might have interest in. Asking those open-ended questions can help, but even just listing out what things you're comfortable talking with and keeping in mind that they might not be safe topics for other people. And that knowing that first can just go a long way. Um, there is a young lady who might have joined this session today that I'm reminded of a masterful list that she came up with. And not only icebreakers, but things to build rapport. She had a list of about 50 things that she shared with a group of us. So having that list can be very helpful and being mindful of how you're developing and having conversations between your manager, or if you're a manager with your employee. So before we go into our next topic, I wanted to ask everyone to share their best tip for building rapport and cultivating relationships in the Q&A. So please share those, and I'll give you a couple of seconds to do that. And just remember, when you're building relationships, just take that one baby step to start. If you're apprehensive and if you're that extrovert that just goes for it, continue to go for it. So now that you shared your best tip with us, wanted to talk a little bit about the employee career lattice. I know you've heard the differences between that lattice and the ladder, and we like to think about the career as a lattice because there's so many different ways that you can develop your career. And first, it's really good to understand the structure that you're working within. Knowing how your organization is structured, knowing what levels or grades there are associated to what jobs and titles, because then you can chart your destination more with more intent. Then it's also important to think about how you like to grow your career. Is it role expansion? Is it leading a project or initiative? Is it taking on more work in order to show your abilities? And of course, in doing so, having that conversation with your manager to be able to share where you'd like to go and why you're taking on that additional work or would like to take on that additional work in order to develop yourself in a particular way. I remember it was a while ago, over 5 years ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, that I was presented with an opportunity to lead a very important initiative within my company, ADP, for a business unit that I was working within. And I had a really important conversation with one of my trusted advisors. Um, and I was worried that I wouldn't be able to keep up the level of performance in my job and take on this additional work, even though it was work that I loved. And my trusted advisor said to me, yeah, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. You need to make this happen. You can do it. You can make it happen. And I did. I stepped out on a limb, took on the extra work on, and it was by far one of the most extraordinary experiences that I've had. And it's enabled me to be the person that I am today, being able to connect the dots for leaders, for HRBPs about this particular subject. So when in doubt, ask a trusted advisor if you're having some wariness about taking a role expansion. You also may want to think about lateral moves. They could be just as important within an organization. If you're in sales and you're only focused on one particular product, maybe you go within a vertical for an array of products. If you're working in HR, maybe you take an opportunity to work in a center of excellence or vice versa. There are always different ways that you can look at lateral moves within an organization. And going back to understanding the structure, you can understand where you can go. Of course, diversification of experience is important. I mentioned it a little bit with this change in COE versus in a field position. It also can be industry wise, depending on where you are in your career. If you're looking externally, you're looking to change not the job, but where you're doing your job. So for finance, HR, those staff or functional positions, you're doing the same work, but just in a different type of environment, a different industry. That's always something great to look at. Visibility. I like to talk about visibility because have you taken stock in who knows your skills, abilities, and your expertise within the organization? Is it a small group of people? Is it across the organization? What have you taken part in during your career to enable people to understand what your loves are, where your strengths are, and where you'd like to grow? And if that pool is small, maybe it's an opportunity to look at who else may need to know about your abilities within your organization or outside of your organization. And that leads into self awareness. When you know your knowledge, your skills, your strengths, what you love to do, and what you do not like to do, that enables you to be able to communicate clearly now into your manager, those people that you would like to be like for to sponsor you, think of you when you're not in the room for roles. It makes it very clear, concise, and everyone's on the same page. Um, just this week, we had a new HRDVP start within our company. And the Aisha 8 years ago would not have taken the opportunity to share a two-pager on who I am. And when I met with this person this week, I gave her those 2 pages along with everything else we were talking about, but I gave her those highlights because before I might have thought, oh, that's too much. We can speak at another time, or I don't want to be too forward. And usually, at least from my experience as an introvert, a self-proclaimed introvert, when you think that you're being over the top or too forward, you're usually not from an introvert's perspective. So take that step and make the leap. And when you think about your work, how you perform, ultimately the work you do is not about your product or service. It's about the people who will benefit from your product or service. Therefore, it makes sense that more doors for opportunities might open based on who you engage with. And I really like that quote as it leads into kind of components to think about when you think about your career, your performance, visibility. I'm sure you probably heard of this framework before, the PI framework, and there are different variations on it. I thought it would be helpful to talk about this during this discussion as we're talking about finding our ambitions, fueling our careers. PI is the equation for success, performance, image, and exposure. You see the percentages here. What's sometimes surprising to people is that exposure is 60% of the equation as opposed to performance. And when you think about performance, it really is table stakes to your career. This is the day-to-day quality of your work, what you've been asked to do, and the quality of results you deliver. When we're talking about image, this is what others think of you. How do you maintain a positive attitude? Think about when you're in meetings. Are you the person that brings up solutions to issues? Or are you the person that um, may only think about roadblocks as opposed to suggesting other alternatives? So, something for you to think about. In terms of exposure, who knows you? Do they know about what you do? Do others outside of your immediate organization know anything about you? And if they don't, who are those people that need to know about your career interests and where you'd like to develop in order for them to understand more about you, but also keep you in mind for other opportunities? So as we think about pie, it's going to be a poll. I'll go back one. I'm going to give you a poll. What area do you need to focus on in terms of performance, exposure, and image? Choose one.
So Aisha, while we have that, people are answering the poll since we
Yeah.
have a lot of people on. We did have a lot of people on the question and answer that you asked earlier. Fill it out. People said, look for things that you have in common. It could be a
Absolutely.
sports team, a friend you both know of, etc. That's one. Someone else said the same, finding common ground.
Hmm.
Someone else said connect on LinkedIn and reach out after the first meeting.
Absolutely. Those
Um,
are great.
Someone else said rapport building tips. Start with an intentional connection, asking for a quick meeting to learn something from the other person.
Mm,
Bonus points if it's something they excel in and love, which is true. Tip empathy. Put yourself in the other person's shoes and try to understand their perspective. Show empathy by acknowledging their feelings and validating their experiences.
that's a big
Another
one.
one for empathy, put yourself in the other person's shoes and try to understand their perspective, acknowledging their feelings and validating. And tip, building rapport takes time and effort. It is an
Mm.
ongoing process that requires active engagement and a genuine interest in the other person. So a lot of good feedback from your earlier question for sure.
Thank you for sharing those, Alice. I love them. Those are excellent. You got to think about your network and building rapport like a garden or, yeah, a garden. You have to cultivate it. You have to give into your garden for it to reap benefits, not only for you, but the individuals that you connect with.
For sure. And here is, we had about 80% participation in here's our poll then. If you
All
can
right.
see those.
I see them. Looks like a lot of people want, focus on exposure. Love it.
Yep,
Not the performance and image, but by far exposure.
yep, for sure.
Wonderful.
So there you go.
Yes. Thank you, Alice.
Mhm.
And thank you all for participating. Hopefully, this will give you some things to reflect on as you move forward. So, moving along, talking about managers as trusted advisors and lending to our conversation up until this point, there has to be a level of vulnerability and empathy. And someone mentioned it in their tip for building and cultivating relationships, authentic relationships. So, the ability for a manager to be vulnerable, to be empathetic is really important in building that safe environment, a safe space to have conversations with their employee. Some of my best leaders that I've loved working for have really excelled in this area. They were able to say, "Hey, we're going to be learning this together," or having a safe space to be able to fail with safety and learn from it. Those have been the most valuable instances when I've worked with those managers. It's also important if a manager can be vulnerable enough to share where their pitfalls might have been in their career to enable someone to avoid and mitigate them moving forward. And depending on what experience you've had, um, choose a few that you can help share your experience in order to help others. It's also really important to keep a pulse on engagement of individuals on your team as a manager. And it's not a cookie cutter approach. It's understanding how people are engaged and motivated in the work that they do. And it might look slightly different for the people on your team, but I'll allow you to get to know them better, but also know how to motivate them. So there can be an increase in discretionary effort. And I'm sure all of you know what discretionary effort, but in case someone does not know, it's the additional effort that we all may give when we're doing something that we love. We know people around us share our values. We know we feel supported, or if we have that long-term goal that we're all working towards. And last on this list is leveraging your network in order to serve those that you support. So you might be a manager that needs to work on their network, and that's okay. You don't have to have all the answers as a manager, but being resourceful and knowing who might you want to reach out to help on a development item for someone on your team, or just someone that even your employee could help you and connect you with. It goes both ways. The buck doesn't always stop with you as a manager. So I think it's always the intent, the idea that you like to help and support members of your team that can go a long way and can go a really, really long way. And an employee knowing that they're being invested in, that someone cares about their future within a company or organization. And I have a quote at the bottom. So I really believe how a leader supports their team day in and day out, developmentally, from a professional standpoint, can really determine to what degree they attract talent moving forward. So let's say a manager has 10 employees on their team, and two of them are really critical roles. Some managers may only focus on those critical roles because they know if those positions vacate, then they have to fill them, and it can throw off the entire work of the team. The manager that focuses on everybody in their development and guiding them in their careers can really reap benefits tenfold, because those are 10 opportunities to support people in their careers from an authentic place. And those people, in some way, shape, or form, will eventually tell someone about their experience with you as a leader. And that's free advertisement for you and what you like to do in supporting people in a very authentic way. And when you have vacancies, people will be asking you about those roles even before they're open, as opposed to not taking the intent and the investment in value in supporting people in their career goals and their development. There may be less of an opportunity of people reaching out to you for those roles before they are available, not just when they're open. So just a different perspective in thinking about things. Alice, are there any questions?
Yep, we actually do have a question. Says, I thoroughly enjoy these webinars. Thanks for hosting. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. And glad you're here joining us for our first session of the year.
Yes, exactly. That is true.
We do have a poll. It's to lead into our next topic. And Alice is going to bring it up, but I'll read it before she brings it up. I'm going to ask you, on a scale of 1 to 5, to what extent do you agree with the following statement? I fully leverage resources that are available to me. I fully leverage career resources that are available to me. And choose a response.
If anyone does have, while people are answering, we've got about 68% participation right now. If anybody does have any questions, feel free to put them in the question and answer, and we can definitely have those. There will be a definite question and answer session at the end as well. All righty, here we go.
All right. A lot of people agree, somewhat agree, and we have some people that may need to leverage their resources more. That's okay. There's always a room to shift and change. Thank you, Alice.
Oh,
And when we think about the resources that we need and what you need to support your career journey, just like I said, things may shift depending on where you are in the season of your career. And just make sure you take action and activation when you need it. And you may need to sit down and just draw up a list. Take 5 minutes. Give yourself a time box and just write down as much as you can. What do you need? And this is beyond the career search. This is beyond reaching out and having that one-on-one conversation. What else do you need? And I would encourage you to always be curious and not be afraid to ask or seek advice or see what other resources might be out there because you don't know what you don't know. Or asking peers or your next level leader, what am I not thinking about in terms of my career journey? That could be a very powerful question. And then think about what steps have you taken to explore your resources? Have you talked to your HR business partner? That's an important person. Some people forget to talk to the HRBP. You never know what might come across their desk, what they might be involved in, or hear about, what conversation they're a part of to know that you might have interest in an area. A lot of times HRBPs know about roles before you do, before they're posted. I know I did when I was a HRBP. And also, how are you engaging in your network to find out about additional resources? And then take time to reflect on what's the health of your network, maybe from a scale of 1 to 10, maybe from 1 to 5. Is it growing? Is it shrinking? How how are the relationships? What's the status of the relationships within your network? How often have you spoken with the people that are in your network or reached out to them or had some kind of dialogue? I know sometimes when I subscribe to a lot of um, something like Gartner or Bloomberg that tells me not only what's happening in the economic environment, but sometimes what's happening specifically in human resources. I listen to NPR in the morning, and at times I've heard interviews that might be helpful for someone I know in compensation, in DEI, whether it's for compensation, it was pay transparency when that was really hot, still really hot, but how people are thinking about it in different organizations. I shared that with a comp partner that I know. And then when it comes, Gen AI has been around for the last couple of years and it's not new, but it's very hot now. And how people are investing in Gen AI may have an effect on bias for Gen AI. And that might be of really important importance to our DEI group here at ADP. So different things you come across, you never know who might need that information or might spark something different. So take the opportunity. It doesn't have to be that hard to cultivate the people that are in your network and reaching out when it makes sense.
Dr. Wright, Burke, we have had a
Yes.
couple questions. One is, how do you know who is your HR business partner?
So if you don't know, one person you can ask is your manager. I know it's in my company. We actually have a company directory or an actually org chart you can kind of map to, well, not map to, but you can look up who's your HR business partner. But the first place to start would be your manager.
Perfect. And then the other question we have is, what can I do when I have reached out to someone and have not received a response in return?
Try someone different. Or maybe wait some time and follow up with that person, whether you have internal chat within your organization, and we do at ADP, or whether it's an email or setting up something directly on the calendar. Everyone is busy. I know you all are busy. And sometimes people forget. So give people some grace and they might not have seen your email or your invite because we have a lot of things coming at us, just in general. Everyone on this call and people that you might be reaching out to. So give people some grace and follow up.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Alice. Some other things to think about. How are you challenging your development? Are you volunteering with employee resource groups or affinity groups within your organization? Or are you standing on the sideline? Are you involved with professional organizations? And if you don't know which organizations you choose, maybe you need to date them. Go to some meetings, figure out if something that you want to invest more time in. Is it something that aligns with your values? That's something a fabulous coach told me one day. Date organizations and see who you want to have that long-term relationship with. just like you do in life. And you may choose, there might be other additional projects you have outside of work, but so we have our life goals and we have professional goals. How are those merging? How are you investing in them? And how are you developing yourself and challenging yourself? Do you have a mentor? Usually mentors are specific to skills or experiences that you need to gain. So do you have one? Do you need to seek out one? Do you need to ask someone to be a mentor? Do you need input from your manager to see who might be available, who might be someone to think about? And who are your sponsors? Do you know who they are? People who will speak highly of you based on your quality work, your excellent professionalism in performance when you're not in the room. And if you're unsure, your manager should be one of those people. It could be your HRBP. It could be business leaders that you work with. And if you're looking for a sponsor, ask someone. Worst thing they can say is no, or give you feedback on why they wouldn't and what you need to do in order for them to be a sponsor for you. And be open to that feedback. I know people say feedback is a gift. Sometimes it is hard to hear, but it should be given in the best interest for you to develop for the greater good and for yourself.
Here, we do have a question that is related to this. What is your opinion? Should you choose a mentor or sponsor that is the same gender, or do you have thoughts around that and help with that?
I have a lot of thoughts, but it really depends. That's my favorite answer. It depends. What are you looking for? Are you more comfortable with someone that is the same gender as you, or maybe same underrepresented group, or do you want something that's a little bit different? It really depends on what you're looking for, what you're trying to achieve, and what's the best path to get you there with your level of comfort. There isn't one way to do things. That's the beauty of life. So it really depends on what you're comfortable with and what you're aspiring to do. Was there another
Perfect.
question, Alice?
Yeah, one is what is a good way to ask someone about mentoring? I think we've kind of talked about that too, is to, but you can ask for that.
Yes. Asking someone to be a mentor, one, being clear on and be able to articulate where you are in your career, what strengths you have, and where you're trying to go in terms of your career, and how their expertise will aid you in your development. And if they have a willingness to teach you about that expertise or be that sounding board for a particular situation or learn a skill.
Perfect. And then question is, do you have any recommendations for any external leadership books or courses?
Oh, books and courses.
And you can think about that one and we can circle back to that at the end as well.
Yeah, I probably will have to have more thought than just this session. So if that
Yeah.
person will reach out to me on LinkedIn,
Yes.
I will share it. And I'll definitely share it with Alice and Talent Connections as well.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. These are wonderful questions. Thank you so much for asking them and engaging in this way. Um, Last but not least, have you mastered adapting your pitch? You might have a pitch, your skills, abilities, what you aspire to do, and those like that 2 to 3 minute high level overview of yourself that you can do in an elevator or in a meeting to open it up if you're meeting someone for the first time. But have you adapted it for different situations within that you might encounter, whether it's in a meeting, whether it's walking down the hallway or meeting someone for the first time, being introduced to someone? Are you able to flip your pitch for varied situations? Practice. Practice with a friend, trusted advisor, someone who's able to give you feedback. It's very important to have your board of directors, those people that you really trust, that you can talk about different things for career and life, and so you can be open to the feedback that they have for you. Because hopefully they are objective, because I have people like that in my board of directors, could be objective, give you feedback in hopes and for the intent of making you better. Iron sharpens iron, as Franklin Covey says. And with that, I'll leave you with a quote that I heard recently and I loved it. And I think it's applicable for everyone on this call. If your vision is for a year, plant wheat. If your vision is for 10 years, plant trees. If your vision is for a lifetime, plant people. So not only from a manager perspective, but also for an employee perspective, whether in profession or in life, It's a nice Chinese proverb to think about when we're trying to think about our vision, how we want to leave our legacy, what we want to do today. And I know in my work, I'm always about planning people. Thank you so much for your time today. It has been an absolute pleasure. And I know we have time for some questions, but I'm hoping that what we discussed today can help you think about your ambitions and how you're going to fuel your journey when it comes to your career. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Wright, Burke. We appreciate that. A couple of things. Can you repeat that quote again and say where we can find it? Because that was such a great quote for sure. And a lot of people are saying that they loved it as well.
So I definitely go repeat it. It is a Chinese proverb that I got from a friend that's a coach. So it
Yeah.
doesn't
Oh,
say
cool.
who it is. It doesn't say who said it.
Okay.
Um, so if your vision is for a year, plant wheat. If your vision is for 10 years, plant trees. If your vision is for a lifetime, plant people.
Yeah, I like that. I'm feverishly writing down as you're talking too. So that's a great one for sure. Yeah, so I would thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Really, if anybody does have any additional questions, please put those in the chat. We have had also some people who have said that they do have some book recommendations and put
Yay!
Love and Work
Please.
or Stand Out 2.0 by Marcus Buckingham. So that's great. And then someone has asked if you offer your mentoring, if you're a mentor. So that's one of them. We will go ahead to the next slide in a minute and we can show how to get a hold of Dr. Wright Burke for sure. One of the questions that we've had also, if you haven't been managing others for that long or not comfortable having career conversations with your team, how or something you don't enjoy, what can you do to improve in that area then, would you say?
A couple different things, and I appreciate the question.
Mhm.
Practice with a friend. Practice with a friend that you trust and having those career conversations. Come up with different personalities and practice having career conversations. And it can start with those open-ended questions. What do you aspire to do? What do you love doing? Where do you see yourself in the next 3 to 5 years? Where would you like to develop? Also, I would encourage that leader to be open to being uncomfortable. Sometimes we're uncomfortable, but usually we're uncomfortable when change is happening or something that we might be have some fear about or some angst. And that's normal when we're changing. But the more you practice it, the more you get used to it and the more you learn and become more comfortable over time. So definitely don't shy away from it, but definitely try. And also reflect on the whys behind your apprehensive. Um, it is your perception, and it's good to have clarity on those perceptions in order to move forward. And if you desire to have higher level of responsibility or roles within your organization, this will not go away. So, the more you can practice, the better it will serve you throughout your career. And feel free to reach out to me if you have any more questions on that topic.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Another one is so if you're stuck in your career and you can't decide what your first step should be, what would you say the first step should be then?
Explore what you like and what you don't like in your job or what you like to do. Have some clarity around that. You might even want to write it out, talk about it with a friend, um, and define what stuck means. Are the roles that you want to be in aren't available? Is it that you are not thriving in the work that you're doing today? So having some clarity around your definition of stuck and why you believe you're stuck is really important to a path forward. And once you know what you like, what you dislike, where you'd like to go, then put some actions in place, short term and long term. It could be for the week, it could be for the quarter, in order to help move yourself forward and move towards that goal you have of feeling unstuck, whether it's a role that you're aspiring to do or whether it's a different type of work that you'd like to do. I hope that's helpful.
Perfect. Another question we got was what measures as a director or global talent leader can plan on taking to ensure the company's workforce is prepared for future challenges and opportunities?
Alice, can you repeat that one more time for me, please?
Yep. What measures as a director or global talent leader can plan on taking to ensure the company's workforce is prepared for future challenges and opportunities? That's a big question.
It is a big question. I think that one, keeping a pulse on what's happening externally within your company, whether it comes to court cases or whether it's the economy, those are things to keep a pulse on. Also, understand the competitors in your specific industry. What are they experiencing? What does your network look like within competitors, but also people that are adjacent to your industry, in your specific field, whether it's sales, whether it's um, implementation or finance or HR. You have people that you can reach out to just take pulse on how things are going in their organization. Because granted, there are many organizations out there, many companies, all different sizes, and people experience things at different times. Leaders, companies embark on different initiatives at different times, given the maturity of the organization, the culture of an organization, many different factors. But the one piece of advice I can give is having that outside in view, along with keeping a pulse on what's happening in other organizations as well as in the outside and external environment would be very helpful.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much. Let's see. As a director, how can he or she assess and address skills gaps within the organization to ensure a strong and diverse talent pipeline for the future? That might be something that you can ask offline too as well.
Yeah, I could definitely probably provide more information offline, but assessing skill gaps, whether you're doing it on a small level within one group with a manager in their organization or something that's larger, multi-level number of managers, I think you need to look at, of course, my opinion, um, what the first determining what skills you need for the future, and if your organization doesn't have those skills, what's your plan in order to get to narrow the skill gap? Are you going to have to hire externally? Can you build within? Is that enough time? I think those are all factors you need to take into consideration when you're filling gaps. Um, if it's on a smaller scale with an individual, is there someone else in the organization that can teach that skill? Or what is the best mode of learning to fill that skill gap? Whether it's through a course, whether it's through side by side with someone else or another method. So I hope that helps, but definitely open to additional conversation.
Perfect. Excellent. If you would like to go to the next screen, you can share all your contact information. And so people can write that down if you'd like to connect with Dr. Wright Burke or email her and continue to ask questions that she can help with for sure. We appreciate that. But thank you so much for joining us today for our Wednesday webinar series. To find out more about us, please visit our website at www.talentconnections.net and www.careerspa.net for more information. You can also find a section of previously recorded webinars that you can view as well. If you want to go ahead and flip it to the next slide as well, I can give you the activity code for SHRM professional development credit is 24-7J as in Jack, S as in Sam, 32 has been approved for one professional development credit for recertification through SHRM. Please be sure to note this activity ID number on your recertification application form. For more information about certification or recertification, please visit the SHRM website. Remember to mark your calendars for our next Wednesday webinar, which will be Wednesday, February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day to you. And same time as always, 12 to 1 o'clock. Thanks so much again to Dr. Aisha Wright Burke for your time today. We really appreciate it. We've had a lot of great feedback and a lot of great positive notes, and we appreciate all of your time. And as I said, I was feverishly writing my notes on this end as well. And have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Talent Connections, as well as Alice and Susan. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Have a fabulous start to your 2024.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.